If you have ongoing exposure to controlling people, it's a virtual certainty that you're going to experience blurry boundaries, which is why I've created the extensive online course called This Is Me, Establishing Boundaries with the Controllers in Your Life. There's a link below that will give you all of the details, and I hope that you would find it therapeutic. One of the signs of a healthy relationship is the ability to discuss differences and difficulties in a constructive kind of way. There's a certain give and take that's part of every relationship, and the more we know each other, the more we engage in various projects, or we have certain expectations or intermingling with one another, differences are going to arise, conflicts are going to arise, and in that healthy kind of relationship, we can sit down and say, hey, let's talk. And let's see if we can get coordinated and have some harmony. And you can do it. It's possible. In fact, if anything, you can actually build a tighter sense of bonding when those kind of things can happen and you do it successfully. Now, when you have that narcissistic person in front of you, they're going to be bringing all sorts of dysfunctions toward you. They're going to want to control you and tell you what to do. They have that tight agenda. They're very self-absorbed. They have that superior attitude. They're pathologically defensive, and it's very difficult to discuss things with them. And when you sit down with that narcissistic individual and say, we need to talk. And you might say, this control stuff is wearing me out, or your anger is way too overbearing, or things of that nature. You're not going to get too far. In fact, one of the things that we know is that these people have such a low level of self-awareness that whenever you do talk with them about something that seems glaringly obvious to you, they can't absorb it. They can't go with you on that. Now, the way I look at it is there are two primary reasons that when you try to discuss narcissistic characteristics with a narcissist, it's not going to go well. And those two primary reasons are, first, they start off by being very self-impressed, at least in their minds, which then second leads them to assume a victim's position way too quickly. Can you see the connection between the two? In their defense, they've decided, well, there are a lot of people out there that may have it out for me, and there are a lot of people that I don't get along well with, but it certainly isn't because of me, and they have concocted this alternate reality that they indeed are the standard bearers, and what they say and what they feel should go. And so they have this false self-impressed attitude that they bring to the equation. And so then when you come along and say, hey, let's talk, it's like, why are you doing this to me? Do you know who I am? And so they take the victim's position, and with those two ingredients intact, you find that it's almost impossible to penetrate and to get any kind of constructive dialogue going with them. Now, I want us to go beneath the surface and ask what's going on here that causes them to have these two primary ingredients of being too self-impressed and therefore the easy victim. See, first and foremost, it's important for you to realize these people are fear-based. They never really learned how to trust. They never really learned how to engage well with individuals, especially in moments of conflict, because in their deep history, it's like, well, if I share myself and if I talk and if I have to start admitting personal issues, I don't think it's going to go well. And so they've concocted, or they've created this tight wall of defense around themselves. And in their mind, they think the world is judgmental, and that's what you're doing to me. So they have that self-impressed compensation that they go with, which then causes them to have that victimization. What are you going to say now that's going to make me miserable? And so this self-impressed victim's mindset is their way of compensating for hidden fears that they won't come to terms with. Now, right along with it, there's another element that's going on, and that is these are shame-based people too. In their minds, they've come to the conclusion that whenever somebody talks about something that's not pleasing, then that means, oh, you're shaming me, huh? For example, if you say, hey, you have this preference and I have this and we're not coordinating well, let's see if we can do a little bit better than that. immediately they go into the shame space thinking, why is everybody down on my case? You can't do this to me. The self-impressed, this is me, keep in mind. And then the victim, I'm not going to allow you to get away with this, comes right into play in a situation like that, but is part of their unresolved sense of shame and false guilt that they carry. And then in addition, because of their fear of other individuals and their inability to deal well with nuance and other people's feelings, they have to have certainty. So when you come along and say, well, not everything is what you say it's supposed to be, it's like, no, I already know what you're supposed to think. I know what I'm supposed to think. I know how things are supposed to go. And so part of overcoming their fears and their shame, they've concluded that if they can have a fixed way of doing things according to their self-impressed agenda, then everything's going to be okay. And so you come along and say, I'm not feeling too certain right now. That blows that false cover. Now, in addition, you can see that with this self-impressed and victim's mindset, it prompts them to think adversarially. Common sense says when we have different people of different persuasions and backgrounds and needs and all like that, of course we're going to have times when we need to figure out how to harmonize. And it's no surprise when we don't always connect on a perfect level. But instead of saying, let me listen to you and I want you to listen to me, which requires a certain amount of empathy, they just go straight into the adversarial kind of mode. It's me versus you, and if you come against me, my self-impressed mindset, you're going to pay, and then if you try to do so, how dare you? That's their victim's mentality. Can you see how that mindset just keeps showing up over and over? They're unable to admit faults or flaws or just mistakes or just differences. And in their tight defensive posturing, they're predetermined to see you as an unenlightened person who's just a nuisance and a menace to them. So you can be very educated on what the pattern of narcissism actually is, and you can sit down and say there are elements here that we need to address, and you're running up against a brick wall because they're predisposed to not receive what you have to say. Now, part of the mistake that you can make as you engage with these people once you hit that brick wall is you can then think, okay, I still have to get my point across. And so you can try to become more convincing. How many times have you gone into the pleading and the forceful kind of communication mode where it's like, I've got to make you see my point of view? No amount of pleading or coaxing or convincing is going to do any good, but sometimes you can make the mistake of going into that realm. Other times, of course, that leads you then to, you get caught up in circular arguments. You say something, and with their tight defenses that are part of their self-impressed but victim mindset, they'll just keep going back and they'll say, well, what about you? And it's back and forth and back and forth. And I'm wondering if you can look back on your relationship with that narcissistic person saying, yeah, and I don't think we've had a single constructive dialogue on any of these kind of things because we just keeps having the same conversation in the negative direction over and over. And then your anger becomes unruly and you wind up having struggles with your own tension and your feelings of contempt, which then causes them to say, see, look at you. And then they double down on their self-impressed enlightened mentality and their victimization of your anger. It's one big jumbled up mess. And because narcissists are so caught up in these hidden, usually it's subconscious patterns that I'm discussing here, they're not going to pull out of it, which means that any attempt on your behalf to force them to see the light is going to just perpetuate your own strain and tension. One of the things that I'm hoping you can do is you can recognize, well, even if I can't confront that person in a constructive dialogue, and even if that person is never going to appreciate my perspective, I can still live out the truth of what I believe is wisest and best. In other words, you individualize your efforts towards healthiness. A simple example, let's suppose they're controlling you, micromanaging, and you're wanting to sit down and dialogue about that. Knowing that that's not going to work, it's like, well, instead of me trying to convince them that they're controlling, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and be my free self anyway. And when they say I don't like that, which is their controlling self, it's like, I realize that. And you go ahead and you do what you need to do anyway. And you claim ownership of who you are. And then if you don't have their cooperation, well, you don't have their cooperation, but you have your sense of autonomy. And that's going to be so important for you to learn how to do that and plug it into all sorts of different kinds of scenarios. Basically, narcissists being too self-impressed and then being inclined to play the victim role are going to have an ongoing sense of denial, and they're going to have an ongoing tendency towards projection. They'll see in you what you're trying to get them to see within themselves, and know that no outstanding, stellar debate style that you're going to come up with is going to be the breakthrough. They are what they are. In fact, the fact that they can't dialogue with you well about their narcissistic characteristics actually illustrates how accurate you are in what you're trying to say to them. Narcissists are broken people. They're in a type of stagnation psychologically, and by that I mean they don't grow. And in fact, if anything, they routinely will regress into childish kinds of reactions. You'll need to know what you're dealing with. These are people who have a false, self-impressed attitude, which then sets them up to play the victim card. And whenever you go in there and try to convince them otherwise, it just becomes one big, huge game to them. So knowing this, and then when you see this in experience, I'm hoping you can come to the conclusion, okay, I see it, I get it, I'm sorry that you're so stuck in your dysfunctional ways. I wish that we could have a meeting of the minds, but short of that, I guess I'm just not going to be able to connect with somebody who has that false, self-impressed attitude and then the victimization whenever I try to talk with them about it. I get that, but I'm not going to play the role of hall monitor and try to make you see what you can't see. What I am going to do is I'm going to go down my path toward healthiness with or without your coordination. That's the way you're going to need to do it. Individualize your efforts. And I hope that videos such as this can give you some good insight and awareness regarding what you're dealing with. That's why I put these out. I've received so many nice comments from you about how you find these to be part of your growth journey, and I thank you for allowing me to be a part of that with you. If you've not already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so. Hit the like button too. We like that. Gus and I'll keep bringing more videos to you. I know at times you could use somebody of a professional nature that can help you sift this out. And if that's the case, I'm pleased to be sponsored by the people at BetterHelp.com. There's a link below. It's an online therapy service, and it's convenient, and it's affordable, and it's available right to you. And so if you have a need for counseling of the online variety, then go to that link, and there'll be a whole team of people that you could select from. In addition, I have my courses, and these are like signing up for online classes, these therapeutic courses. Each one has multiple videos, written materials, guided questions. They're quite extensive and require a good bit of work from you, but that can be a part of your growth. Ready, set, connect. This is me. Free to be. Each of them have their own distinctive angles that they go with. We have my webinars that I produced, our website that have many articles, my podcast, lots of resources for you. And again, I thank you for letting me be on your journey with you. I know that there are times when you want to dialogue with that person about their narcissistic characteristics, but by definition, narcissists don't receive input. So that being the case, I do encourage that individuation process that I talked about. Be your own healthy self, and if that person can't appreciate it or go with you, be yourself anyway. I find myself thinking I'm not very good being anybody than who I am. That's what I'm committed to. And in doing so, I hope that you can be a person of steadiness, and then that will take you to your place of peace.